Hello everyone and welcome back to the 500 horsepower tournament. I don't have anything else to say, so let's get into it. So, for part 2, we're gonna be racing 3 laps around Tokyo Expressway East, as everyone continues their battle to see who's champion. But one more thing, if you're still confused on how many eliminations there are in this round, basically the 5 people who have the least points by the end are eliminated. So yeah, that should clarify things for the ones who didn't know. And with that being said, it's time to get on with the races. So, for the first heat, we have 454 HO Bowtie, Oatmeal Scucolotti on the road again, Ferrari, Buck Sargent, Howard Hughes, Lighter, Halo, and Mojave King. And here we go. Right away, you can see Oatmeal Scucolotti overtaking Bowtie as soon as he builds up enough speed. And as everybody's making their way out of the tunnel, Ferrari's also trying to do the same thing. And as he overtakes Bowtie, Mojave King comes out of nowhere and takes second away from him. And as they head into the first corner, Lighter is trying to hold off Buck Sargent. And as Halo catches up to them thanks to the slipstream, Buck Sargent uses the first corner to his advantage and manages to overtake Lighter. And now he is trying to make sure he does not lose that position to anyone. And as Ferrari is chasing him down, Mojave King is trying to catch up to Oatmeal Scucolotti, who at the moment is trying to redeem himself after last race. And from what I can tell, he seems to be succeeding as of right now. And while that is happening, Halo is trying to find an overtaking opportunity on these classic muscle cars. But he unfortunately fails as Bowtie manages to catch back up to him thanks to that. And so, as the halfway point of the lap comes by, the Hatsune Miku Porsche continues to try to overtake the Shelby. And while the Firebird is building up a gap, Ferrari managed to catch up to Mojave King. But now the question is, will he be able to overtake in these narrow streets? And as they make it to the final section of the track, Halo is still trying to overtake the classic muscle cars. And I'm guessing Ferrari and Mojave King are slowly but steadily catching up to Oatmeal Scucolotti. And they are nearing the end of the lap as this final corner comes around. And as they are making their way through here, Oatmeal Scucolotti and Mojave King go wide, which allows Ferrari to take second and almost overtake Oatmeal Scucolotti. And as they are now on the start-finish straight, it's now an intense battle of who has the better acceleration and top speed. And while we're making it back to the tunnel, Mojave King uses that opportunity to try to overtake Ferrari back, and he succeeds. And further back, Halo managed to overtake Lighter and Buck Sargent. But either way, we are now on the second lap. Mojave King and Oatmeal Scucolotti are now head-to-head as the roadblocks are now in the way. But unfortunately, neither of these three were able to react quickly enough, causing Ferrari and Mojave King to spin out after a massive head-on collision. And that fact alone allows Halo to catch back up to and overtake Mojave King, and also allowing classic muscle cars to catch back up. Meanwhile, Oatmeal Scucolotti has already made it out of the roadblock, which allowed him to keep the lead. And as they manage to break out of the roadblock, they're now making it to the first braking zone, which honestly isn't much of a braking zone anymore. Anyways, Ferrari is now in second as Buck Sargent fails to overtake Mojave King. And I guess Lighter is still battling him. And if you're wondering, no, Halo did not make it out of the roadblock yet. Which means that Bowtie is no longer last. But how long is that gonna last? We're just gonna have to wait and see. But either way, Buck Sargent is still winning against Lighter, since the Shelby doesn't seem to be very great at overtaking. And while that is happening, Mojave King continues his battle against Ferrari, which is only getting more and more interesting as the race goes on. Heading into the halfway point of the track, The battle between Buck Sargent and Leiter is also getting more intense, as Leiter is now reaching the Firebird's overtaking distance. But whether or not he's gonna be able to find an overtaking opportunity is still undetermined. And if you're wondering, yes, Halo did eventually get out of the roadblock and isn't just stuck there. And while the classic muscle car battle continues, Mojave King is actually getting gapped by Ferrari. And he is also trying to catch back up to Oatmeal Scucolotti, who has already made it to the 180-degree corner. And as he makes it to the set corner, the braking zone is no problem for him, meaning that he does not overshoot the corner at all. The same, however, cannot be said about Mojave King. And as you can see right here, Buck Sargent is still winning against Leiter. As for Bowtie, what can I say? The Chevy Chevelle just kinda got left behind. And so we have now made it to the straight, which is where Mojave King has an opportunity to catch back up to Ferrari. However, I don't think that's gonna be the case, as Ferrari makes it to the third and final lap trying to catch back up to Oatmeal Scucolotti. And it looks like both Mojave King and Ferrari are making their way through the tunnel. And Buck Sargent has managed to pretty much gap Leiter on the straight. Meanwhile in the front, Oatmeal Scucolotti has already made it to the first sector of the track. And as the GT40 is making it to the downhill thingy, he managed to build up some speed. However, I don't think that's gonna help him in making it through the roadblocks. And so, as he now has to deal with trying to find an open gap, that fact alone allows Ferrari and Mojave King to catch back up to him, as they have also reached the roadblocks, with Ferrari being here first, and Mojave King following right after. And while Oatmeal Scucolotti is stuck, Ferrari has managed to instantly find an overtaking opportunity, claiming first while the other two are stuck here, which allowed the people in the back to also catch back up. And yes, that also includes Halo, even though he's not here yet. And from what I can tell, it looks like the next one to break out is Mojave King and Oatmeal Scucolotti, which means that Halo was unfortunately unable to catch back up in time. But that was definitely not enough to stop him from breaking out alongside Buck Sargent, meaning that the Porsche 911 is still in this. Anyways, it looks like Mojave King is now trying to make sure Oatmeal Scucolotti does not catch back up to him, and Buck Sargent is trying to hold his ground over Halo. And so we are now onto the final sector of the track, as despite what happened, Oatmeal Scucolotti is not giving up. But unfortunately for the GT40, it doesn't look like the Countach is giving up either. In the meantime, Ferrari in first place gets 5 points as he manages to redeem himself after the last race of his. The bad news is that Mojave King goes wide, but the good news is that so does Oatmeal Scucolotti. And as they are now on the final straight, it doesn't really look like the GT40 is gonna be overtaking the Countach. And even though Oatmeal Scucolotti lost in the end, it was still impressive that the GT40 took the lead for this long. But enough of that, Mojave King in second gets 4 points, and Oatmeal Scucolotti on the road again in third gets 3 points. And Halo, as he managed to overtake Buck, in fourth gets 2 points, and Buck Sargent in fifth gets 1. And given they finished in the bottom two, Bowtie stays at 0 points, and Leiter stays at 2 points. For the second heat, we have Yuxter, Zeep Sheep, Charles Leclerc, Julie Canotto, Xolstis, Max Verstappen, and Mojave Queen. The song must live on. Anyways, right off the bat, you can see Zeep Sheep trying to overtake Yuxter and actually succeeding. But Yuxter did not take that very kindly and manages to overtake him back right after. And as we are now out of the tunnel, Julie Canotto already manages to overtake everyone alongside Mojave Queen. And whilst everyone makes it to the first corner, the Devil Z comes out of nowhere and takes the podium for a bit. which is what I would have said if Euxter wasn't going easy on him. And as they make it across this corner into the downhill thingy, Charles Leclerc is trying to overtake Zeep Sheep. And from what I can tell, the F40 did actually succeed. So far, things are not looking good for the 400R. In the front, it looks like Mojave Queen has managed to overtake Julie Canotto, as Xolstis and Charles Leclerc are now being held off by Euxter. And once they make it under this bridge, the battle only intensifies from what I can tell. And while that is happening, Zeep Sheep has fallen behind alongside Max Verstappen, since their cars don't seem to be as dominant as the others. In the front, it looks like Mojave Queen is successfully holding off Julie Canotto. And as they're making it through the final sector of the track, things are only gonna get more intense. And so, as Euxter makes it into here, he manages to gap Xolstis and Charles Leclerc by a little bit. And during all of that, like I said earlier, Zeep Sheep and Max Verstappen just kinda got left behind. Since from what I can tell, the cars are fast, but they just lack the acceleration. And while everyone makes it to the 180-degree corner, Mojave Queen goes wide, which allows the RX Vision to take the first place. And now whether or not Mojave Queen will be able to catch back up to him, it's only a matter of her top speed. While further back, it looks like Euxter has managed to build a respectable lead over the others. And as we are making our way back to the tunnel, Max Verstappen is chasing down Zeep Sheep. And Xolstis in the Devil Z seems to be catching up to Euxter as the second lap is about to begin now. While in the front, it doesn't look like Mojave Queen has managed to catch back up. And as they head out of the tunnel, the roadblocks are there. And Julie Canotto crashes into one, allowing Mojave Queen to fly past him. But she also gets caged in. And as she manages to find an open gap, the roadblocks seem to be no problem for her, allowing the 512BB to happily carry on with the race. And alongside her, as they also manage to break out, are Julie Canotto, Xolstis, and Euxter, as Euxter is now trying to gain his position back from the Devil Z. And unfortunately for them, it looks like Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, and Zeep Sheep are stuck here. But, just like the others, they eventually manage to break out, with the M2 breaking out and the F40 and 400R following right after. Although Max Verstappen getting out first doesn't really matter much, as he instantly gets overtaken by Charles Leclerc. And now all three of them try to catch back up to everybody else, as they do not want to be earning 0 points this race. Speaking of which, Euxter has pretty much been gapped by the Devil Z, as Xolstis proves to be faster than he initially thought he would be. And while the Devil Z is being competitive, Julie Canotto has also failed to catch up to his target, since it looks like Mojave Queen has managed to actually gap him. And as she is making it into the final corner, Julie Canotto, despite being very far behind, is not giving up and trying to catch back up. And while Euxter's still struggling to catch up to the Devil Z, it looks like Charles Leclerc has managed to gap Max Verstappen. And it just kinda looks like Zeep Sheep got left behind, since the 400R doesn't really seem to have any pace here. And since the F40 and the M2 are pretty quick in corners, it doesn't look like it's gonna do Zeep Sheep much of a favor. And as everybody is now heading into the top speed section, nothing much really changed heading into the third and final lap, apart from Mojave Queen maybe having a bigger gap over Julie Canotto. But given the roadblocks are gonna be there soon, I don't think that's gonna change much in the long run. And so, Julie Canotto heads into the first corner as Mojave Queen is already on the downhill thingy. And as she makes it through the said downhill, what do you know? The roadblocks are right there. She tries to make it through them quick, but from what I can tell, it does not succeed, as she gets pretty much caged in. And that fact alone allows Julie Canotto to catch back up to her. And same can be said for the others, I guess. But given they're way farther behind, I don't think that's gonna change much as of right now. For now, it's a battle between Mojave Queen and Julie Kanoto for who can find an open gap first. And during that, Xolstis and Ukester join the battle, as they have made it to the roadblock too. And while they are failing to find an open gap, that fact alone allows even Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen and Zeep Sheep to catch back up. But they're not in the clear yet, as they now also have to find a way out. And as you just saw, it doesn't look like much of a problem for Max Verstappen or Charles Leclerc. But in terms of actually getting out, it looks like the first one to do that is Julie Kanoto. And the RX Vision is also being followed by the F40, 512BB, and the M2 competition. However, it does mean that Zeep Sheep, Xolstis, and Ukester are now stuck here. But anyways, Max Verstappen kinda gets left behind due to not having as much of a pace as the other three. And while Max Verstappen is here vibing, Mojave Queen is trying to catch back up to Charles Leclerc. But now the question is, will Charles Leclerc be able to hold her off with that much of a gap? And during all of that, Julie Kanoto is just chilling in first, as the RX Vision definitely redeems itself after last time. And as he is making it to the final corner, it looks like his first place is pretty set in stone. As for Charles Leclerc, he manages to make it to here too, but he gets bonked by the 512BB, allowing Mojave Queen to overtake him as a result. And now it looks like it's a chase to the finish line between the two. In the meantime, it looks like Xolstis is the one to make it out of the roadblock first. But either way, with that much of a gap over everyone else, Julie Kanoto has pretty much secured himself the 5 points. And regarding the chase to the finish line, it looks like Mojave Queen comes out on top, getting 4 points while Charles Leclerc gets 3, Max Verstappen gets 2, and with no way of anybody catching up to him, Xolstis gets 1. And that also means Ukester and Zeep Sheep unfortunately stay at 0 points. For the third heat, we have Marionette, Pin, Thunderstorm Gaming, Private First Class Chuck Patterson, Reagan, SVTVP, and W12. And here we go. Right away, you can instantly tell that Marionette had the best start off the line. However, that does not stop Pin in the Hippie from catching back up. And as we make it out of the tunnel, Pin tries to overtake Marionette and succeeds. And both of the Porsches are now being chased down into the first corner by Thunderstorm Gaming. And W12 is trying to make sure he does not get overtaken. However, I don't think he really succeeded in that, as SVTVP overtakes him on the first corner. And as we head into the downhill thingy, the Hippie tries to build up a gap as Thunderstorm Gaming and Marionette are battling. And further back, Chuck Patterson is trying to make sure he does not lose any more positions, since the C2 Corvette is already second to last. And while that is happening, SVTVP is trying to make a run for it, trying to catch up to Thunderstorm Gaming, who is currently losing against the Porsche 992, as Marionette manages to catch up to the Hippie and is now trying to overtake it. However, Thunderstorm Gaming is not gonna let that stop him. And during that, SVTVP and W12 are slowly but steadily catching up to the front of the grid. But while they are slowly catching up to the front, Chuck Patterson is holding off Reagan at the moment. And from what I can tell, the C2 is actually succeeding in that. While further in the front, SVTVP is not making any ground, but he is also not losing any ground either. And even further in the front, being honest, if Pin keeps this up, he might be able to guarantee himself the 5 points. And so, he makes it to the braking zone. Unfortunately, the Hippie goes wide, which allowed Marionette, Thunderstorm Gaming, and SVTVP to overtake him. That's the one thing about the Hippie. It's quick, but it just doesn't have the handling like the other three. But either way, we are now on the straight. And if you're wondering, yes, Chuck Patterson is still beating Reagan. But either way, in the tunnel, Thunderstorm Gaming is making a move on Marionette, and so is SVTVP as the second lap begins now. And just like that, SVTVP takes the lead. And heading out of the tunnel, he is now trying to make a gap over the others. However, I don't think that's gonna be the case with the roadblocks being there, as everybody who made it here is now trying to find an open gap. Fortunately for him, the C7 Corvette makes it out of there really quickly, and so does Thunderstorm Gaming, allowing them to continue their battle against each other. While Marionette is now stuck here with Pin and Chuck Patterson, who both managed to overtake him in the roadblock. But not for long, as all three of them managed to get out really quickly, with Chuck Patterson now taking the podium spot, as he now has to deal with not getting overtaken by Marionette or Pin. As for W12 and Reagan, they were unfortunately not as lucky, as the Impreza and Audi TT are failing to find an overtaking opportunity from what I can tell. Either way, as we now make it across the downhill thingy, Chuck Patterson is making sure he does not get overtaken by either of the Porsches. Because, I don't know if this was clear yet, but he needs these points to survive. And so, making his way into the halfway point of the track, he is actually succeeding in holding off the other two. Unfortunately, that does not last very long, as Marionette manages to overtake him going under the bridge. And now from what I can tell, he's trying to catch back up to the other two. Speaking of which, SVTVP is currently winning the battle against Thunderstorm Gaming. But overall, the C7 and the M3 are pretty on par in performance, as the gap between one another doesn't seem to be growing nor shrinking. And during that, Marionette has already managed to build a respectable lead over Pin and Chuck Patterson, who are both currently battling against each other. And as they build up more speed, it looks like Pin comes out on top, taking 4th place while Chuck Patterson falls down to 5th. And if you're wondering, yes, W12 and Reagan were able to break out of the roadblock eventually, although they are far behind now. Anyways, Pin goes wide again, allowing Chuck Patterson to take 4th place for a bit longer. And now we're about to see if the C2 Corvette can beat the Hippie on the straight. And as they are now both heading back into the tunnel, Chuck Patterson seems to be doing very well against Pin, since the Hippie doesn't seem to be catching up as quickly as everyone initially thought it would. Either way, we are now on the 3rd and final lap. And from what I can tell, Marionette's gap only seems to be growing. And even though SVTVP has a larger gap over Thunderstorm Gaming now, it's nothing major really. Anyways, we are now making it across the first corner and into the downhill thingy, as SVTVP is now making his way to the roadblocks again. And so he makes it into here, crashes into one like usual, and is now trying to make his way through here. And that fact alone allows Thunderstorm Gaming to catch back up to him. But SVTVP is in luck, as the roadblocks seem to be pretty spread apart from each other, meaning that it's not as difficult to find an open gap as it usually would be. And so he can now just cruise to the finish line alongside Thunderstorm Gaming, who also made it out. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about Marionette, Chuck Patterson, or Pin. And that fact alone is finally giving Reagan and W12 a chance to catch back up to them, as both of them are now making it into the first corner. And what else is really there to say? Other than the fact that Reagan and W12 not finishing in the bottom 2 is a possibility now. But while they are catching up, Marionette has managed to actually make it out of the roadblock, as the Porsche 911 is now rounding out the podium. As for Chuck Patterson and Pin, unfortunately they're still stuck here, as finding an open gap seems to be a lot more difficult for them. Not only that, but it also looks like they now have to deal with Reagan and W12, as they both managed to catch back up to them. And now they're just sitting here, waiting for an opportunity to open up. Not much to say here. In the meantime, SVTVP, with a respectable gap over the others, manages to claim first place, while Thunderstorm Gaming is second, and with no way of anybody catching up to him, Marionette is third. Meanwhile, in the back, it looks like the next ones to break out are Chuck Patterson and Reagan. But given the Impreza broke out right after the C2 did, Chuck Patterson now has to make sure he does not get overtaken by it. And so far, it seems to be working, as the elderly refuses to give up and as Reagan realizes this tournament is not just gonna be a walk in the park for him. But either way, they have now made it to the final sector of the track. And from what I can tell, the gap doesn't seem to be growing nor shrinking between them. And so, they're heading into the final corner now, where, being honest, anything could happen really. And, well, it really does look like Reagan has underestimated the C2 Corvette. And as we make it across the braking zone itself, Chuck Patterson does not mess anything up, and neither does Reagan. And as we have now made it to the straight, nothing much changes on the set straight, as the Impreza was unable to catch back up either way, meaning that Chuck Patterson is 4th and Reagan's 5th, while Pin in the Hippie stays at 1 point and W12 stays at 4 points. For the 4th heat, we have Terrified Hockeyzard, Martso, Freddy Fazbear, Virgil, Fancy Wreck, Jakubek, and Interrupting Octopus. Anyways, we now head off. As you can see, Terra did not get the best start off the line, which allows almost everyone to overtake him right away. And now that we are making it into the Knot Tunnel, Fancy Wreck and Terra are kinda getting left behind, while Jakubek and Virgil are on par with each other. And heading into the first corner, Martso manages to make a move on Freddy Fazbear. Not only that, but Jakubek also managed to catch up to him, and Virgil overtook him too. And now we are heading off into the downhill thingy as Interrupting Octopus manages to catch up to Jakubek. And he also managed to successfully overtake him. And now the MX-5 is trying to catch up to the podium as it's being chased down by the Beetle and Beetlebus. And due to being slower than Octopus, Freddy Fazbear now has to deal with holding him off. And while that is happening, Virgil manages to catch up to Martso, meaning that he now also has to hold off the car behind him as well. And so, we have now made it to the halfway point of the track, as it looks like Freddy Fazbear is successfully holding off Octopus. And during that, it looks like Martso is also successfully holding off the LFA. And heading into the last sector of the track, Jakubek's, Fancy Wreck's, and Terra's performance is not the best at the moment. But either way, Freddy Fazbear goes too far on the outside, giving Octo an opportunity to overtake him. And in the back, it doesn't really look like Fancy Wreck or Terra are falling that much behind. As you can see, they're not really that much off pace. And heading into the final corner, it looks like both of them are pretty on par with each other. And now that we are actually on the braking zone, Martso goes wide, giving Virgil the first place. And since we are now on the straight, I highly doubt the Jaguar E-Type will be able to keep up with the Lexus LFA. Also, I'm pretty sure something must have happened while I wasn't looking, because Freddy Fazbear managed to overtake Octo back. But I'm pretty sure the MX-5 on the straight can easily make up for that. And the Lexus is leading the way into the second lap. As like I said earlier, Martso doesn't really seem to be catching back up to Virgil. And now that they're driving out of the tunnel, oh, never mind. I guess Martso did succeed in catching up. But will he be able to overtake him in the roadblock? We're about to find out. And I don't know if you can see it, but Octo having a massive head-on collision with one of them actually caused his MX-5 to spin out. And while he's trying to recover from that, Virgil and Martso managed to make it out of the roadblock. Which means that the battle between the LFA and E-Type is not over yet. As for the rest of the grid, let's just say they were actually stuck in the roadblock for quite a bit. And it looks like the ones not stuck anymore are Jakubek and Terra, as it looks like they're not in the danger of getting 0 points anymore. And after that, following them as they manage to break out is Fancy-Wreck, Octopus, and Freddy Fazbear in that order. Although Fancy-Wreck was overtaken by Octo due to those last 2 roadblocks over there. But regardless, all 3 of them are now on the way to catch back up to the others, since they are now the ones at risk of getting no points this race. And further in the front, Jakubek is just kinda chilling with a podium spot as Terra is now trying to hold his ground in the Charger. And I guess the corners are his best way of doing that, since there ain't no goddamn way he's doing that on the straight. And so, heading into the halfway point of the circuit, Jakubek is, like I said, just chilling on the podium spot. Meanwhile in the front, it looks like Marzo got gapped by Virgil in the corners. And now heading across the final section of the track, we'll see if Marzo can redeem himself. And while that is happening, Jakubek is, quite surprisingly, not actually pulling away from Terra. And as they are now the ones making it into the final sector of the track, Octo is slowly but steadily catching up to the Charger, as the Fairlardy Z and the Beeble Bus don't seem to be as much of a threat as the MX-5. And it shows by how far behind they are compared to Octopus. And so, Terra continues to hold his ground over the others, as he now makes it to the 180-degree corner. And from what I can tell, it doesn't look like anybody is really struggling on the said corner. Not even Jakubek's Beetle, which itself doesn't seem to be the most stable thing in the world. Anyways, in the back, it looks like Freddy Fazbear and Fancy-Wreck are having a battle against each other for who doesn't finish last. And during that, Octo now has a chance to catch up to the Charger as the final lap has now arrived. And from what I can tell, it does not look like Marzo managed to catch up to Virgil. If anything, Virgil's lead only grew as the race went on. But with the roadblocks being there, I'm pretty sure that should twist things up a bit. And that fact alone gives Marzo a perfect opportunity to catch up. But I hope he's not forgetting he still needs to find an open gap before Virgil does. Meanwhile, them being stuck in the roadblock allows the others to catch back up to them. And if you're wondering, yes, Octo managed to overtake Terra on the straight. And both of them are now making their way into the roadblock along with Jakubek. But I'm guessing they're both a bit confused about not seeing the roadblock sooner. Either way, they make it to the roadblock itself. And the tomfoolery even allowed Fancy-Wreck and Freddy Fazbear to catch back up. However, Jakubek and Virgil already got out of the roadblock in the time being. And as the LFA successfully manages to beat the Beetle already, I think it's already pretty obvious who out of those two is gonna win. As for the others, it looks like Terra and his friends are now just stuck here. And finding an open gap took them so long that even the Spectator NSX managed to catch back up. But as we are now making it under this bridge, it looks like the one person that's rounding out the podium is Marzo, since he was the next one to get out. While it looks like the next one out is Freddy Fazbear, as he successfully made it through the pack before the other 3 did. Meaning that it's now only a matter of who out of the remaining 3 manages to break out the fastest. And just like that, both him and Marzo are now just cruising to the finish line. In the meantime, Virgil in first place gets 5 points, Jakubek in second gets 4 points, and with no way of anybody catching up to them, Marzo in third place gets 3 points, and Freddy Fazbear in fourth gets 2. So I guess now we just wait for one of these 3 to make it out of the roadblock. And it looks like that person is Fancy-Wreck, as the Beeble Bus manages to find an open gap. And so Fancy-Wreck, just like that, manages to claim the 1 point for himself, which means that Terrified Hockeyzard does not get any points, and neither does Interrupting Octopus. For the 5th heat, we have Tom the Cat, Zetsu, A-Lord GT, Sophie, me, Arcaadely, and Brett Fox. Off the start line we go as Tom the Cat's Tesla instantly manages to zoom off. And once everybody builds up more speed, that fact alone gives them an opportunity to overtake the Vision GT. And now that we are out of the tunnel, we can see that Sophie, Brett Fox, and I were able to do just that. Heading into the first corner as Sophie is quite surprisingly really quick. And even though it took way longer than everyone else for him to do so, Archaeadly still managed to overtake Zetsu. But as we are now on the first corner, it looks like he was overtaken back, and so was A-Lord. And into the downhill thingy we go as Zetsu manages to catch up to me and Sophie. But not for long, as I am now off to catch up to Brett Fox and Tom the Cat, who are currently battling against each other to see who's better. And as we are making it to the halfway point of the circuit, my 996 joins the battle. While further back, it looks like Sophie is quite surprisingly managing to hold off both Archaeadly and Zetsu. And across the halfway point we make it, as Sophie continues to do well against those two. However, all of that does mean that A-Lord is being left behind. And while he is trying his best to try to catch back up, nothing really changes for Archaeadly or Zetsu heading into the final sector. In the front, it looks like Brett Fox is currently winning the battle against Tom the Cat and me, since neither of us were really able to overtake the Focus. Back on Sophie's side of things, nothing really changed aside from Archaeadly and Zetsu overtaking each other back and forth a few times. And now that we have reached the final corner of the lap, and so the three of us in the front make it to the braking zone and oh, Brett Fox goes wide. And even though Tom the Cat also went wide, it still did not stop him from overtaking the Focus. And as for people in the back, same old for everyone, nothing much changed. And now that everyone's making it to the tunnel, it looks like I managed to successfully overtake Brett Fox. And Tom the Cat now just needs to make sure he does not lose the... Wait, what is the Tesla doing? I don't know about you viewers, but to me it looks like he just threw away the victory. And I guess whatever just happened to the Tesla allows Sophie to take the podium. Anyways, we're now on the second lap, let's see what's gonna happen here. And as all three of us on the podium make it to the roadblocks, it's another thing of not being able to react quickly enough as all three of us spun out. But unlike me or Brett Fox, Sophie spinning actually ended up helping her in making it out of the roadblock, meaning that her C3 Corvette is now in first place. And it is now making it to the first corner. Anyways, looking back at the rest of the grid, it looks like Tom the Cat made it out of the pits. And as he easily overtakes all of the roadblocks at once, he is now the only one who can possibly catch back up to the C3 Corvette. And as Tom the Cat is now on the actual corners themselves, that is where he can use the Tesla's handling to try to catch back up. And if you're wondering, yes, the rest of us were able to make it out of the roadblock, just not as quickly as those two. And so, into the downhill thingy we go as A-Lord is unfortunately still in last place. And during that, I am currently battling Archaeadly. Oh, deja vu. While Brett Fox is trying to make sure neither of us actually catch up to him, and Zetsu is trying to keep up with us in the BMW Vision GT. And as we make it into the halfway point of the circuit, it looks like Archaeadly actually managed to catch up to Brett Fox, and so did I. And Zetsu is now on my tail, trying to overtake me on the said halfway point, but the 996 of mine ain't gonna let that happen. And Brett Fox is making sure he does not lose the podium. Meanwhile in the front, Tom the Cat's strategy of trying to catch up in the corners seems to be actually working, as he made a ton of great progress in the corners. And now he is heading into the 180-degree corner as Sophie does not seem to have any problems with it. But Tom the Cat, on the other hand, does, as the Tesla goes wide, causing him to lose a lot of time to Sophie. And now that they are on the straight, there is absolutely no way that Tom the Cat is gonna catch up with no top speed. meaning that Sophie in her C3 Corvette is cruising as she is still in first heading into the final lap. A very unexpected outcome followed by a very unexpected challenger. And so she is now making it out of the tunnel as her C3 Corvette's lead only continues to grow. Meanwhile for us, it looks like I am now trying to overtake Arcadely. And Brett Fox, who manages to make it into Arcadely's slipstream, also tries to do that. And Zetsu's Vision GT is A-Lord's friend now, as it is unable to catch back up to the three of us due to having no top speed. Either way, me and Brett Fox have successfully overtaken Arcadely, while Tom the Cat slowly but surely made it to the corners again. And as Sophie is now making it through the downhill thingy, and also builds up enough top speed while she's at it, but it's unfortunately no use as she now has the roadblocks to deal with. And that fact alone allows Tom the Cat to make up for all the time he lost on the straight. And now that he is also in the roadblock, he now just needs to find an open gap before Sophie does. Heading his way into the exact same spot as Sophie, but unfortunately, he was not quick enough, as the rest of us have managed to catch back up to him. Not only that, but all five of us also managed to find an open gap before he did as well. And as the Tesla makes it through the exact same open gap as them, the event that happened doesn't really mean much, as all five of us got stuck in a massive train, allowing Tom the Cat to take the lead. But the train in question didn't really last long, as it is now a very intense chase to the finish line between everyone, with me now trying to catch back up to Tom the Cat, Brett Fox holding off Arcadely, and Zetsu trying to pull away from Sophie. All in a battle to determine who gets the points and who doesn't. While poor A-Lord is really not having the best day today. And so we now head into the final sector of the track as Zetsu manages to successfully catch up to Arcadely and Brett Fox. But due to not being able to actually overtake either of them, he instantly gets gapped right after. And Brett Fox is still on the podium. And being honest, I really wasn't expecting him to be this good at holding off others. In the meantime, I pretty much managed to pull away from everyone else trying to catch up to Tom the Cat. The Tesla goes wide on the 180-degree corner, but that's not enough for me to catch back up to it. And it all comes down to the final chase, as Tom the Cat now needs to make sure he crosses the finish line before I overtake him. And just like so, we are making it back into the tunnel as the chase between me and Tom the Cat is really getting close. The 996 is really catching up to the Tesla now, and heading into the finish line, it's really close, but it looks like Tom the Cat stays in first, earning 5 points, while I get 4, Brett Fox gets 3, Arcadely gets 2, and Sophie manages to pull a last-second overtake on Zetsu, claiming 1 point while Zetsu stays at 0 and A-Lord GT stays at 1. And these are the standings after everything that happened. And being completely honest, I was not expecting the races themselves to be this intense. And I really hope the same will carry on into the next track we race on. And that's about it for the second part of round 2. If you enjoyed it, which I know you did, like the video, and maybe even consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the third and final part.